Hi, welcome to PSB Academy Radio Studio. Today we're going to explore the topic of how analytics impacts the industry. And in particular, we're going to zoom into two industries which will be marketing and finance. With us in the studio today, we have two industry practitioners with us who are well experienced in their own trades. We have with us Yeap Ming Feng, who is previously the founding marketeer and head of City Singapore, which is the largest personal finance community. Currently, he is the CEO of TradingKey. So let me turn it over to him to talk more about his company and introduce himself as well.
Hello. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm actually CEO of TradingKey, which is actually a platform currently designed to help investors make smarter decisions every day. What we generally do is to combine content alongside with market data, and hopefully we are able to generate tools that will be useful for everyday investors to make good investment decisions. And on the side, away from my main role, I actually mentor startups in terms of their marketing and growth strategy. Yeah, so these are the few things that I'm currently busy with right now.
Wow, that sounds like quite a lot that you're doing. Thank you, Ming Feng. And the other guest that we have is Dhawal Shah, who is the founder of an agency named Two Stallions. He's also an angel investor and he's also a trainer in digital marketing analytics. So, Dhawal, tell us more about what you do and tell us more about yourself.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. So my name is Dhawal. I'm a founder of Two Stallions, which is a regional full-service digital marketing agency. We've been helping businesses in the APAC region grow for over a decade already, digitally. And beyond that, I'm also an angel investor and a mentor similar to Mingfeng. I help early stage startups with their growth, their analytics, and their leadership aspects. And then finally, I've also had the opportunity to be a trainer, and through my training, I've actually trained over 4,000 people so far in the space of digital marketing analytics and digital transformation. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And my name is Teh Siew Yee, and I'll be the moderator. I'm from PSB Academy. Welcome to the studio once again. Let's explore the initial stages of how you get started. So I understand that you use quite a fair bit of analytics in what you do today. So tell us about how did analytics crept into part of what you do?
I mean, for me, it was out of necessity. So, back in the day, I actually had a bootstrapped e commerce startup. And back then, with a very limited budget, I had no choice. I couldn't go with a spray and pray approach, right? So, I needed to make sure that my money was well spent. Therefore, I started leaning a fair bit on the data and analytics to try and make sure that I get results. And after my e-commerce startup, when I started my agency, I just brought that mindset with me in terms of every aspect of agency life. So even when we started deploying websites for our clients, we would make sure that analytics was always installed. When we run campaigns, we make sure that data is always front and center and that clients have access to all of the data. So it's just been out of necessity, but now it's grown to something that obviously is a very important part of how we run our agency and how we approach clients and work with them.
So I feel you actually. So I think our story is pretty similar because we all started in a startup space where everything is limited.
Yeah.
We have limited resources. So for me, it started when I was starting out as a growth marketer at Silly. Back then, we just closed our pre-seed round. So we are talking about very little money here. I'm restricted to about $2,000 a month in terms of marketing budget, and then the target were ambitious. So with that, it means that everything that I do, we need to apply a very clear and calculated logic to the decisions, the marketing decisions that we're making. On top of that, we need to track our ROI very rigorously just to make sure that, if the campaign is not working, we need to cut it almost immediately because this will allow us to conserve more resources for the next phase of growth. This has taught me ethically to maybe interpret data quickly and to understand audience behavior through data dashboards. And I think with that, it became a habit, like very much like you, to really always look at data and have a data-driven approach to everything that I do.
How has dashboards, analytics, AI, and scenario modeling changed the game for you in finance?
I think data on its own is pretty much, we call it boring, because if you don't put a story behind it, it's very difficult for you to understand what it is. This is also why data analysts is so important. They give each piece of data a story. They create a linkage between each data points that allows marketers, various management at the company to understand and know what is going on with the data that is being collected. So I think on top of just collection of data alone, now that we are talking about a little bit about AI, so AI also allows us to learn more about the data that we are collecting, and on top of that, give you a little bit more predictive modeling for things like finance or even investment strategies. It allows you to backtest and also build various layers of instructions and safety net on top of the say investment strategies or tools that you're building, which can then assist your customers to do better decisions in terms of investment.
So, Dhawal, how about for the space of marketing? How does analytics and building dashboards and applying AI comes into the picture for you?
Well, I mean, AI is I say pretty recent phenomenon since 2022. But prior to that, I mean, dashboards were central, right? When it comes to digital marketing or marketing online, the biggest differentiator is the fact that it's data driven and that you can uh, tweak your results or get better outcomes from your marketing by looking at the data and making changes. So from that perspective, dashboards have always been central. But the main challenge or the biggest outcome from a dashboard shouldn't just be the fact that you're sharing data. It should be the fact that you're able to get insights from it and take action on it. Right. So for us, it's not just about sharing the data; it's about sharing the right data. So for every client at Two Stallions, we generally try to first figure out what the objectives are, and then when we build the dashboards, they are specific to their needs. So there are no dashboards that look alike. We don't just send reports that are standard and just a spew of data, because data on its own is raw. There's no insights in it. So for us, it's more about making sure those dashboards translate to some sort of insights. And then in terms of AI, that has actually brought a whole new dimension to how we analyze data and what sort of additional value we can add, right? Because with AI, like what Min Feng mentioned, you can now do a lot of back testing. So suddenly, previously, if you want to like look at 5 years of back data and try to analyze that, that's going to be 1 or 2 months of someone's time to just look at the data, sift through it, write code around it. But now with AI, you can just do it in a matter of hours, and it's just changed the game. So now your insights are a lot more refined, and of course, it doesn't mean that AI takes over. It just means that now humans are a lot better equipped to turn things around faster and to be able to add more value.
Where is analytics coming into the picture? As in, what kind of numbers and what kind of results or insights are you talking about when you say you're able to draw this out? Can you give us some examples of what you mean by results or numbers in marketing?
So when you talk about analyzing this data and working with this data, um, it really depends on business to business. So let me give you an example, right? We started working with this company in the US, and we worked with them for 3 years. When we first started with them, they had a very low four-figure budget, right? Like similar to what Minfeng was saying, $2,000 a month in order to try and get some performance. And their goal was just to try and generate as many demos for their platform as possible. So with $2,000 a month, we had a basic website. We had performance marketing on Google Ads, on Facebook, Meta Ads. Back then it was Facebook, and essentially we're just trying to optimize for conversions for demos. But as this company started growing and they started getting results from their demos, we were able to then build up their infrastructure for them, where we were able to set up a CRM for them, able to set up marketing automation for them. And as we built up all these different infrastructure, we unearthed new layers of data and new layers of insights, right? So now instead of just looking at how many conversions they're getting, we are now able to see what's the lifetime value of a customer, right? How many of these demos convert to actual sales and how long do these people stay on the platform? And now based on that, we were able to now optimize their campaigns to a whole new level. We were able to create more segmented landing pages. We were able to create more targeted campaigns. And then in terms of their ROI, that just shot through the roof. And they were essentially, by the end of 3 years, spending 6 figures a month easy and without any issues and full confidence, because they knew what their lifetime value was and what their ROI was.
Thank you for sharing those examples. And What about in the field of finance? What would be some of the examples of how data is being applied?
So maybe I'll come from the I'll answer this in the point of view of during my time at Silly, where so what Silly actually does is that every month about 700,000 users come to our website either to read a certain piece of content, to interact with certain product pages, or to really ask questions and discuss topics that's particularly close to their personal finance concerns, right? So initially, what the Silly as a company set off to do was hopefully potentially we want to match the correct product to the correct user, the correct credit card, the correct insurance, the correct wealth planning product to the correct users based on this conversation. So that in that sense, data and their behavior or whatever they do on the platform becomes very essential for us to make sure that we are able to match on these, target some of these products to our best of to our ability to actually send it over to the users in terms of various marketing campaigns. But as this happened over time, we realized that the more and more data, as we collect more and more data from all these behaviors, we were able to do a lot more. What do I mean by this? We were able to understand Singapore's people, the preference of people living in Singapore. What do they really want out of their finances? What kind of product really attracts them? What do they not like about certain products? And with that, we were able then to advise various financial institutions, potentially who maybe they want to come out with a new credit card. They want to know what is the best marketing message they can use, or what are the features that they should be putting into their next travel insurance plan that will attract users in Singapore to want to get on those insurance plan and so on. So as we broaden the use of such data, of course, after we refine it, we understand it, we were able to give these insights to not just our consumers, but ultimately the partners that we were supposed to actually help sell their product in the past.
Analytics looks like it's a cross-function, cross-industry skill set that is very useful. Now, how about was there any moment when you apply analytics and some discovery surprised you?
I mean, I guess as you get older, you get more set in your ways. so I assume that I get surprised more and more every time now. But I mean, a very classic example would be like a recent campaign they were running for a client, and the goal or the target audience was a much younger demographic. And generally, when you talk about younger demographics, you would think that, hey, this is definitely going to be a mobile first campaign. All of this demographic generally only uses their mobile devices to take action. And when we ran the campaign, we realized that yes, mobile did drive a lot of traffic, but in terms of the objectives that the client was trying to achieve, which was registrations, it didn't actually drive any. In fact, almost 90+% of the registrations came from a little bit of traffic that was coming through desktop. So we actually had to look at the data, quickly change our perspective, and optimize the desktop landing pages instead. And we actually managed to turn the campaign around, which was not doing very well in the initial phases. And at the end of the campaign, we were able to deliver the two sweetest words that a client likes to hear from us, which is over delivered and under budget.
Wow, that's surprising indeed. I didn't know there is that desktop is trending up. Thank you for sharing that.
Again, back to the portion about the community part, I think we usually have a preperceived notion of what people in Singapore, their habits are. So back then, what we were trying to do is we were trying to create a new product. Basically, it's a product where users can come in and rate certain financial products, be it a telco plan or a credit card and so on. Back then, we were wondering what mobile plan we should be opening this product to, right? Because in the past, the behavior is a lot about you recontracting with a 2-year plan with a telco. They give you some dollars off the mobile phone, and then you're stuck with them for 2 years. That was how we used to do things in the past, if you remember. But what happened was when we were looking across our various discussion, we noticed that one particular post stood up in terms of engagement, in terms of views, in terms of people discussing it. So the whole entire topic revolves around someone saying that, look, I did my calculation, I went on for a SIM-only plan, and I bought a phone from Carousell. I saved $300 to $400. So that caught our attention. We started doing a lot more calculation with running every SIM-only plans, and then matching it to a Samsung phone or even an iPhone. And we realized that actually there is cost saving going on here. So what happens next was amazing. We started throwing out a lot more content and a lot producing we tilted the product towards that direction where people can start reading simony plan, and we noticed that over time people are moving towards the habit of embarking on the simony plan.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting how sometimes our thoughts and our assumptions are being challenged when we apply analytics, because what we derive out of analytics are the actual facts and figures that tells us the stories behind those numbers. And that brings me to talk about a term that we have heard and is becoming more popular recently, which is data translators.
Here in Asia, we keep hearing about this term and the need for data translators, which are people who can make sense of data and be able to draw the insights out of it for the business side to consume this information. What is your take on this, on the data translators? Do you think there are enough such skills or such people in the market or in the workforce right now?
I would say probably not. That there are people who are equipped or have graduated with this term and label themselves as data translators. But to find someone who actually understands the business aspect of things and is able to marry the data in a meaningful way, I think there's definitely still a dearth of people who can do that job.
Definitely agree with what you just mentioned. I think most of the businesses, if you look at it, they at some point realize the importance of data, because most of the businesses are going through digitalization. They are online now, so which means everything can be tracked. That's one thing. Next, you usually see a split between in most organizations there's like a very strong data engineering team, and on the other side you have business decision makers who needs to make decisions to steer the entire business forward. In between this is a gap where it's supposed to be filled with your data analyst and data translator to really bring these two together on how they can make better decisions based on the data that's been collected throughout.
What do you think is the data literacy or data readiness in companies in order to help fill this gap? Do you see that this data literacy is a challenge?
There's a few parts to this question. Number one, we understand that the reason that we have some of these gaps in terms of data literacy is because some of the organization, they may not really have the data driven culture in them. While they collect a lot of data, collecting data is just one part of data literacy. You need to know what you're trying to do with that data. You need to be very clear in terms of your objective of, once I gather this data, what should I do with that? I think some of the startups that I notice is they are collecting data just for the sake of it, and then they put into this like warehouse and they have no idea what to do with it, and then they are just making decisions separated from what the data is being collected in that data warehouse. So that's something that I feel what we call is that the companies, they might be data driven but they are not data ready. Means they have data but they are not ready to use it yet.
Even from a SME angle, sometimes when we are pitching a company and they have an existing website, and we ask them like, hey, what are your analytics? What have your analytics told you? Very often you'll find that the company, like the business leaders in the companies, have not looked at the data or have not been informed about the data. So it's just like a white elephant, like it's collecting data on the back end, but they're not using it. So yeah, like what Min Feng said, right? It's there's a gap between collecting data and actually ingesting it and making sense of it. Because the challenge with a lot of companies is that they don't view data as a team member, where the goal of data is to actually provide you with insights so that you can act upon them. So the winning companies are the ones that actually look at the data, listen to it, and then take action. And that's something that's still lacking in terms of how most companies approach it, right? So I think that's where potentially data translators might have an impact. But the challenge with data translators is they need to have that business sense, or they need to understand that business deeply enough to be able to change the minds of the business leaders in the company, right? Because as a let's say as a founder of the company, I would know my business best, or Min Feng would know his startup best. And then if a data translator comes in and tells him that, hey, the data is telling me this, you should do this, and is an inexperienced person who doesn't know the industry well, then there's likelihood of no action being taken still.
Right. So you talk about data collection and you talk about applying or rather being able to derive action out of
Yes.
those data. So that is what data translation ought to do. Um, would there be a case where perhaps sometime in the future, do you think that this role or this task could be overtaken by AI?
Depends on experience levels. So I would say at this point in time, if you had a fresh graduate role, I would say AI probably has already taken over your tasks, and is already doing your work. I would say in a few years, it's likely that it'll get smarter and smarter, and it'll be able to give you a lot more insights. And that's where the human aspect of it comes in, right? Being able to have the empathetic perspective of your customers, of the business, of the people within the business, and that's where like the translators or analysts will be able to distinguish themselves from AI, where then AI becomes an assistive tool rather than taking over their role.
How is it like in finance?
So I actually fully agree with you. I feel that AI should be there to assist you and not really to take away what humans are made to do. Fundamentally, if you look at the use of machine learning and AI, the data is what you feed it, and then the outcome is what you determine. So that aspect is still fundamentally back down to the humans who are going to run this whole entire program, right? Because if I have only the humans know the certain objective that I want my AI to help me achieve. Yeah, so I think be it in the finance or the marketing sector, that shouldn't change. And if anything were to change, it will be the competitiveness of this entire space, where the demand for good data and accurate data becomes more and more demanding, because now you have AI to help automate it. If you have someone who are able to achieve and get insights on the company, on the data that they have been collecting way faster than you, they do have the advantage to make certain decisions way faster than you, and that becomes competitive.
So in finance, well, in fact, in a lot of industries, speed is very crucial. So that's what you've pointed out. And I think, Ming Fen, you also brought up a very good point that while AI can help us automate and speed up some of these tasks and processes, but there is still the requirement of a strategic thinking of that business decision that requires human input. So it does looks like, well, at least not in the near future that we foresee, that AI will completely take over the role of a data analyst, right? What do you think then is the next big thing that is coming up on the forefront of data analytics?
I mean, what's coming up? I mean, in a way, this will probably take maybe a few years still. But what I'm looking forward to is a live adaptive environment where real-time results result in real-time changes, to immediately impact campaigns or to immediately impact outcomes. I think that's the future we're heading towards. Already, like you can see with Meta releasing its Meta Advantage, and Google Ads also releasing its AI tools, that we are moving towards a much more quicker turnaround in terms of like immediate data resulting in immediate changes to tweak your campaigns and get better outcomes. So this live adaptive environment is something that's upcoming, and then yeah, and then it's a matter of whether humans can keep up.
And I think that's riding on the notion which was brought up earlier, which is speed is crucial.
Yeah.
Right. And what about in the field of finance? What will be some of the next big things that are coming up in terms of data analytics?
Yeah, I can jump on this by answering with what we are trying to dabble with these days. So right now at TradingKey, we do have quite a number of data when it comes to especially stocks market data, when it comes to market historical figures and company finances over time, and then how they have performed, and what's all the indicators. We are trying to get most of these sorted out, and from there we are turning them into indicators. So what does this mean? Is that we now have a full list. We are talking about close to a few hundreds metrics that can sort of tell you what investment decisions you should make, and so on. But we still need to train a certain model. We are trying to train it. We are trying to let it understand some of these numbers. But what I see in future is that if you understand finance and investing, most of the time, it is the human element that stops you from doing certain things, or might cause you to make certain investment mistakes. Right? It can be your emotions getting in the way, or your lack of understanding of certain stocks. Plus, you may not know your risk very well. So what I'm hoping to see in future is definitely a world where humans and AI complement each other by assisting and covering the flaws of some of our humans' behavior in making investment decisions.
Would there be such a thing as too much data?
I mean, there's been a lot of talk right now recently of AI slop, right? Which is essentially data on your different social media channels, which is being generated by AI, and it's like tons and tons of data, and a lot of it is just pointless data, right? So data in its raw form is useless, in my opinion. It needs to have some sort of purpose. You need to have some sort of objective around it, and only if you're able to interpret it and analyze it and get something out of it, then it makes sense to do it. So yeah, absolutely, I think there is such a thing as too much data.
Building on to this is where the human factor actually come in, because of your understanding of various topics. You're able to then remove part of this data or or really fine tune some of this data. I think it's the same for the finance industry or even like various investments, strategy and decision. There are also period of time in history where the stock market is just very different from the rest, such as the Lehman Brothers collapse and even like COVID. So some of these data points needs to be fine tuned with the help of humans instead of taking them as just a ordinary every other day data to look at it. Yeah.
That sounds like there is such a thing as too much information, and it looks like it is actually quite a skill to be able to fine tune and detect what is the right set of data that you should be working with. What do you consider as the right mindset for people who are interested in analytics?
Yeah, it's the ABC mindset. Always be curious. So as long as you're always asking questions and looking at data and trying to interpret it, I don't think you can go wrong. You can have any tool set or any sort of skill set with tools, but at the end of the day, it's about whether or not you're able to get down to the right questions and able to interpret based on those questions.
In my opinion, for this is I'm assuming a data analyst were to look at which company he or she wish to join. I think I'll actually recommend them going for something that is close to their heart, they're passionate about, they are familiar with, because um if not, then the whole entire work is going to be pretty much a drag, right? I mean, you're looking at data without understanding the business properly. You can't advise them properly because it's not something that interests you. So what I would say is for data analysis to really join a company or a sector which particularly excite you, and so that when the data comes in, you know the story that you need to tell and you know what kind of business objective the company is going for.
Analytics, while it can be developed and gained as a skill, there is also the domain where we apply the context of the analytics, and we should always be picking a domain which is of interest to us. Well, so personally for you, how would you approach a problem or a decision making when you want to think and apply analytics or the logic of analytics? Would you be able to share with us how you personally would go through such a thinking process?
I think this goes back to the point of having too much data that we mentioned just now. Definitely, when you look at what each organization is tracking, there's a lot of data. But fundamentally, as a decision maker, you need to identify what is your ultimate objective. For example, I want to know about what's contributing to my revenue, and then from there you move back one step to understand what are the sources of revenue, and then continue breaking down into the various data that you want to track, and then from there you start pulling out the data that is important to you and analyze them, uh, going back to getting more insights about what is causing your revenue to be going up or to be going down. So I think that full understanding of the full funnel of what contributes to the metrics that you're trying to go for, or the problem statement that you have at the moment, helps. And from there, if you are very well versed in your whole consumer journey, you then will be able to know the data that you need to pull out. It can be the traffic on my website, because or a traffic on a certain page that results in a certain revenue being contributed to your full revenue. And then from there, you look at what are the sources for all this traffic, and then you go on and fine tune your strategy from there.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you're saying there should be a clear objective that is defined on what you want to gain out of doing the analysis, and there is a strong understanding of the context as well as the process. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. So, Dhawal, how about you?
I mean, I agree. I agree with what Min Feng said. So, just like for example, like an anecdote that drove this point home for me, right, where it's important to ask the right question or the right objective. In the early days of Two Stallions, when we were running a campaign for a client, there was stagnation in the results, right? And I spent like a few days changing up the segments, trying to change the audiences you're targeting, the kind of ads you're running, the budgets, etc. And there was no uptick in results, right? So I was just about to like go back to the client and be like, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. And suddenly, like one of my teammates just asked, like, hey, what are we trying to solve for? And I realized the problem is not with the campaign; it's also with the offer and the objective that we're trying to solve, right? And just by bringing that offer, updating that offer, the campaign didn't need any tweaking. In the initial phase, I was just basically looking at the metrics and trying to tweak the metrics, but it's actually the meaning behind the metrics, right? So I think it's important that you understand what the objective is, ask the right questions before you dive into the data and start looking at the numbers and trying to optimize for them. Yeah, because it's very easy to fall into a trap of like, hey, let me reduce the bounce rate on my website, which is the number of people that drop off your site, right? But then what's the outcome of that going to be? Why are you doing that?
Thanks for sharing that with us, Dhawal. And that is such a clear example of where the numbers that we look at on paper, they appear as just numbers. But behind that, each of this number actually attributes to a certain meaning in
Yep.
real life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what analytics brings out for us.
Yep.
And you've also pointed out a clear objective. Again, that's a resounding theme that we are hearing in order to perform good analytics. Well, for somebody who is new to analytics, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that you have come across or you have encountered?
I think not so much on the misconception, but I think a lot of data analysts who are potentially fresh grads, they feel that there is a need to know programming, coding, and a lot of this kind of data structure. But depending on which kind of which sector or which role that you're trying to move into, right? Are you trying to be a data engineer that's combined with a data analyst kind of role, or are you just going to be a pure business data analyst kind of position? It changes. This kind of thing changes. So, a business analyst who looks at data every day doesn't necessarily need to be able to program and understand code, because there will be someone data warehouse doing it for them, or simply you can pick that up as you go. But most importantly, you then need to find where your passion is and which part of the entire journey because data analyst is a very broad role, right? You want to know which problem you are trying to solve when it comes to a certain organizational issues. What is your position here trying to solve? Is it to build a structure, to build a data warehouse, or is it more on the analyzing of it and working with the business units to get better insights?
Yeah, I would agree. And these days, there are a lot of no-code platforms can use vibe coding with ChatGPT to give you some of the code that you need to set things up. So, I mean, as a starting point, you really don't need to be too worried about programming. I mean, the over the years since I've been doing a lot of training in digital marketing analytics, one of the things I keep hearing is like, oh, I'm afraid of all the numbers. So I mean, some people they get overwhelmed by the numbers, and even with clients, right? Like sometimes you talk to them and pitch them, they'll be like, "Hey, there's so many numbers to look at over here. What do I look at?" Right? So I think it's just a matter of again the domain expertise. Like if you acquire the domain expertise, the numbers will start making sense to you.
What we are hearing is that while the field of data analytics can be very broad, because on one end of the spectrum, you can, if you want to, venture into something more technical that can involve programming.
Yeah.
But at the other end of the spectrum, you can also be applying analytics more on the business side of things, which will require more of a business context, the domain knowledge, and perhaps with the help of tools and platforms that requires no code or low code, then the job can also be done very well. Well, programming is not one of the strong requirements. What could you consider as the fundamental skills or knowledge that ought to be a large part or is essential for somebody who wants to venture into data analytics?
Organization and logical thinking, those will help. Yeah, because again, we're looking at numbers, it's just about your mindset and how you approach it. So you need to be very organized because again, it can easily overwhelm you, and you need to be very driven by what you're looking at and ensure that you understand it. Yeah, so the logical thinking is super important as well because you know which number leads to what, um, and therefore the insights that are derived from it. So it's really more about the approach that you bring to it rather than the skill sets that you learn from it, right? Because the skill sets can be taught.
What about math? Would you consider math as a strong requirement?
I think it depends on which part of the data analytical side that you are working on, right? I definitely agree with what I just said. I think the logical thinking to always have to think deeper, and because each data when built differently doesn't really tell you a story. You need to piece them together. You need to come up with various connections for this. When it comes to math, if you are manually calculating all the numbers, and that's definitely something that you're not doing right, because now in today's world, most of the calculation can be done automatically. Understanding the logic and the formula though might help, especially for say financial data analysts. They need to know very well some of the numbers and the calculations and the formula behind it. But other than that, I think most of the thing can be automated to give you the proper results.
Yeah, it sounds like with the help of tools, with the help of certain platforms and software, the job can be done. But of course, the understanding that forms the foundation when we're using the tools, that will also be helpful. Well, for somebody who is thinking of going into it, and say if these are working professionals who are currently in a career that's completely different and not doing any of this data analytics at all, would you say that it's realistic for them to consider switching into this line?
It really depends on how passionate you are about learning. If you have a growth mindset and you're always open to learning, then I don't see why not.
What would you consider as the kind of support or learning environment that will make it easier for somebody who is considering that change of wanting to step into data analytics?
Generally speaking, if you're a self-starter and you're going through a career conversion, putting yourself in a work environment where you take on or you are open to taking on as much work as you can just in order to learn, and you have a mentor who is okay for you to make mistakes as long as you're always learning and iterating from there. I think that can definitely speed up your uptake into that particular profession. Yeah, like for example, even in Two Stallions, we have uh, people who have converted their careers from another industry to our industry, and they've grown with us over the years. So it's not unheard of. It does happen quite often. It just depends on the mindset of the individual and whether or not they have what it takes.
If you are talking about career switching and or whether somebody from a different industry wanting to take up this course, I think the maybe one of the way you can look at this is that if you were to take up this course, number one, you do have an advantage because you can come in with a different point of view than some of the more seasoned data analysts. Number two, of course, how I would tend to view this is that as a human, you will pick up a lot of skills along the way. Which one do you use more of and which one do you use less of is up to you, right, to pick and choose in terms of the career that you ultimately dive into. So data analytical skill is something that it's like swimming. You learn swimming and then you know how to swim. That forms a skills that you have learned over the years. Whether you become a professional swimmer or not, or just a Ironman taken by the Ironman race, that's up to you, right? I mean, but you now have these skills, which also means that you can, on top of maybe putting it into your career use, you can also apply it to your daily lives. How are you managing your investment portfolio? How are you managing your finances? Or how do you view certain things around the world? You start to have this change in behavior, and of course at your workplace, at your current workplace, potentially this skill can help you make better decision in terms of even like prioritizing the work that you have, or how do you see certain problems and how do you solve it with the help of data?
Wow, that's really interesting, and thanks for telling us that. So, what we have learned is that a data analyst doesn't just hold a single skill of data analytics, but they would have a breadth of other skills as well. And likewise, the other way around of looking at it, data analytics is not something that you apply only at one place, which is to do the job of a data analyst, but you can also apply that in personal life. And exploring that same theme, what are some of the roles within your sector that are hiring people with this skill of data analytics?
As mentioned just now, I'm collecting a lot of investment and market data. So for that, I need a particular set of team that is, I need a team that is very experienced in understanding investment and company finances, and then how they convert this into some insights that we can ultimately use to produce tools. So that's one end of it, right? And the other side, of course, as a group, so TradingKey belongs to a larger organization. In organization, we have your financial analyst who actually projects the runway and the revenue of the companies. And then, of course, when it comes to marketing, we will have our own set of analysts to understand the data that of various campaigns or your user behavior on your platform. So there are definitely different sets of skill sets required. But at its core, all of these people are good at understanding the data presented to them, and then they then can translate it into something useful for the larger organization to use.
Well, that sounds like it's quite broad, and there are quite a number of roles. What about in the marketing arena?
To be fair, like in the marketing arena, depending on what your interests are, you could be like a performance marketing strategist, you could be a copywriter, you could be a SEO specialist, right? And there's so many different roles that are available. But at the end of the day, if you have an analyst background and you also have you want to pick up domain knowledge in a specific area, then it'll be a lot easier for you if you have that mindset of being able to marry the meaning of the numbers to the objectives, right? So if you bring that, that gives you added advantage from the get-go. So to be fair, an analyst could apply for any potential role that they have interest in, that they have some aptitude for as well, with a background in data analytics.
What about for people who are currently doing the job of a data analyst? What would you say are some of the skills or knowledge or even tools that they should learn in order to continue to stay ahead of the game?
Become friends with AI. That's a short. That's a short answer at this point in time, because obviously, technology is rapidly evolving. So they do need to keep up with the tool sets, depending on which industry they're in. So I would say right now AI is probably the biggest risk factor to them. So the faster they befriend it and they learn how to use it to their advantage, the better it'll be for them.
I think the speed at which you execute your data analysis matters also. I think depending on the industry you're in, as mentioned just now, anyone who is able to provide timely insights to your organization, you are actually giving that organization a head start to implement various strategy around their growth.
What would be your main key takeaways that you would like our listeners to learn or to benefit from our session today?
Based on our session today, I hope that definitely people who are tuned in, definitely, number one, they get more insights to what companies are doing with data, be it on the finance side to build tools or even on the marketing front. But for those who are potentially on their way to becoming a data analyst, I think as mentioned just now, you should always be passionate about the visualizing the numbers that the data that you have for the correct users. So I think a lot of time we try to zoom in because of our work. We zoom in on certain things. Like you feel that as a data analyst, you are potentially just looking at certain set of data. But if you can take time to zoom out and understand the entire impact, I think it will benefit you very greatly.
So I would like to say that when it comes to marketing, creativity is still very important. So don't forget that aspect as well. Data is just there to assist you in to get better outcomes or do better creatives. But at the same time, if you're trying to go into the space of data analytics, there's no need to be overwhelmed or to be scared. Start small, be curious, have a growth mindset, and there's plenty of opportunities for you from a personal perspective, like Min Feng mentioned, or from a professional perspective for you to dabble in data analytics.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us. Well, we started off our session today by exploring how analytics impacts the industry and, in particular, marketing and finance. And from the conversation that we had, we have explored a lot of ideas, and we've also looked at how data analytics actually is very helpful in creating an impact to these industries. Well, and of course, um, the takeaway from our session today is that for our listeners who feel that somehow they could be limited in trying to grow and trying to uh, get some meaning or some insights out of what they're currently doing, data analytics definitely is one direction that they can look at in order to elevate and bring themselves out of those limits.
We have definitely learned a lot from our session today. So thanks so much for joining us in the studio today, both Ming Fen and Dhawal. Thank you for your time.